In the red corner, weighing in at 4 fingers, the 1 finger per fret technique. And in the blue corner, all the way from 19th century Germany, the Simondl technique. Let's get ready to rumble! If you're a beginner bassist, you're probably wondering which fretting technique to learn. 1 finger per fret, aka OFPF or 1FPF. Or the Simondl technique, aka index, middle, pinky, or 1-2-4. Having the right fretting technique is crucial for any bassist, whether you want to shred solos or just make it through a full gig of laying down grooves. So let's battle these techniques head to head, or finger to finger, and see which one emerges victorious. I'll also reveal the biggest bass fretting technique myth, but first we need to put these techniques through their paces. Before we dive into this battle of the bass fretting techniques, let's meet our challengers. 1 finger per fret means that each finger gets assigned a fret within a position. So if you're using frets 5, 6, 7, 8, that means you're using fingers index, middle, ring, and pinky on those frets respectively. 1 finger per fret does not mean you have to stay stretched out static in a position like I'm doing here. You can actually shift within a 1 finger per fret fingering, like this, which I call micro-shifting. The Simondl technique comes from an upright bass method book by Franz Simondl, first published in 1881. Finally, I'm YouTube famous! As the term is commonly used on electric bass, Simondl technique just means fretting with your index, middle, and pinky covering a 3-fret span. And your ring just acts as a support for your pinky finger. Let's put these techniques to the test. They'll fight it out on a 3-round bout on some popular bass lines.
Round 1, fight!
First up is Doin' It to Death, aka Gonna Have a Funky Good Time by James Brown, with the great Fred Thomas on bass, who apparently is a fan of this channel, which was really cool to find out.
Good time. We're gonna have a funky good time. We're gonna have a funky good time.
To determine the winner, let's spotlight one pivotal moment in the bass line where the right technique has the most impact. Let's look at the last 4 notes. We're using frets 1 and 3, so if you use 1 finger per fret, you'd assign index finger to the 1st fret, middle finger would be the 2nd fret if we were using it, and then 3rd fret would be the ring finger. So you'd play this whole thing, ring, index, ring, index. But because you don't need access to the 4th fret with your pinky, stretching the hand this far isn't actually getting you anything. And if you're not careful with your technique, trying to make this stretch from index to ring on these super low frets might get you slanting your fingers like this and sending your palm towards the neck and your thumb over, which is just not good. If you use Simondl, aka index, middle, pinky, your index takes the 1st fret, your middle would take the 2nd fret if we were using it, but then the pinky takes the 3rd fret, so this section would go pinky, index, pinky, index. This is a more neutral, natural hand position than this. To cover this amount of space, we just need frets 1 and 3. Especially down on this end of the neck. So you're getting the bass line without unnecessary tension in your hand from stretching. So for getting the job done without wasting energy or risking slanty fingers, I award this round's point to the Simondl technique.
Predict this.
Let's play this together quickly for fun. You can try out both techniques to kind of test for yourself, or you can just follow my ruling and stick to Simondl. I'll give you 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll start. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're gonna have a funky good time. 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 Let's take 'em up, Fred. We gotta take you high.
All right, time to place your bets. Who do you think is going to win, Simondl or 1 finger per fret? If you think Simondl, you can vote by clicking like on this video and then subscribing to Bass Buzz and clicking the bell. If you think 1 finger per fret, you can vote by clicking like on this video, then subscribing to Bass Buzz and ringing the bell. That was subtle, right? They're not going to notice I'm just begging for subs.
Round 2, fight!
Next up is Time Bomb by Rancid, with Matt Freeman tearing up the bass.
Black coat, white shoes, white hat, Cadillac, yeah. Before the time bomb. Black coat, white.
Again, to judge the winner, let's spotlight just a few crucial notes. Most of this bass line, and this spotlight in particular, spreads across a 4-fret span, frets 4, 5, 6, and 7. So in this spot, using Simondl means you'd play the 4th fret with the index and then shift your hand without stretching to grab the 7th fret with the pinky. That means a ton of shifting back and forth from 4 to 7 to 4 to 7 that feels tiring at this tempo. See how often I'm having to shift even just in that one spot. If you use 1 finger per fret, you'd use the same index pinky fingering, but you can let your hand stretch out more to cover the 4 fret position without as much shifting. That means you hold a little more tension in your hand to maintain the stretch, but you don't have to frantically shift back and forth. So for providing a more stable hand position that covers this whole bass line, I award this round's point to 1 finger per fret. Let's have a bit of fun and play this together. You can relive my high school ska band days with me. Again, you can test out both techniques for yourself or just stick to 1 finger per fret, covering frets 4, 5, 6, and 7. And if these fast 8th notes are challenging for you, I cover fast alternating plucking lines like this one in my Beginner to Badass course over at bassbuzz.com. Here we go, 4 clicks and we're in. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Black coat, white shoes, white hat, Cadillac, yeah. Before the time bomb. Black coat, white shoes, white hat, Cadillac, yeah. Before the time bomb. Now he's gone, now he gone.
Round 3, fight!
Final round in the battle of the bass fretting techniques. Here's Plush by Stone Temple Pilots with Robert DeLeo on the bass. We need to spotlight 2 sections of this bass line to do a fair judging. So first let's look here. Again, you're at the bottom of the neck using frets 1, 2, and 3. So if you used Simondl, you'd play them index, middle, pinky. If you use 1 finger per fret, you'd go index, middle, ring. But like we talked about in round 1 with the James Brown tune, that stretch is kind of wasted energy unless you need to reach a higher fret with the pinky. But we're just going back to the 3rd fret of the E after this walk up. So playing all of this index, middle, pinky with Simondl is the clear winner here, since it saves you some stretching energy. Let's move on to our second spotlight. Now we're looking at a 4-fret span from fret 2 to 5. To use Simondl here, you'd have to shift somewhere in the walk-up, since there are 4 notes but only 3 fingers that we're using. And that actually works okay, because you've got a whole 8th note of time between the 4th and 5th fret notes where you can shift. But I would still lean towards 1 finger per fret for this section, because you can just assign a finger for each note, index, middle, ring, pinky, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because this bass line moves around outside of a single position, a good case could be made for using both Simondl and 1 finger per fret at different times. So for both having advantages at different points in this line, I'm awarding a point to both techniques. Let's play this together and then we'll jump into the final judging. Experiment with different fingerings however you want. I'll be using Simondl for most of the line, except for that 2, 3, 4, 5 walk up where I'll switch to 1 finger per fret. All right, 4 clicks and we're in. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's check the scoreboard. 2 to 2, a tie? Wait, is this an unprecedented moment in bass sports history? Or is it a calculated move by your bass teacher illustrating a point? That question leads us to the number 1 bass fretting technique myth. The myth is that you have to choose one technique to learn, either Simondl or 1 finger per fret. By taking both techniques through these 3 rounds, we've busted that myth because you saw how they were both useful in different situations. Saying there's one best fretting technique for everything is kind of like saying there's one best tool. I'm the strongest and best tool of all.
Hey, screw you, buddy.
Guys, come on. We all know one tool isn't better than the other. It depends on whether you're dealing with a nail or a screw. The Simondl technique saves energy, like we saw in Doing It to Death, and that's a huge advantage, especially if you're playing a groove like that for 5 or 10 minutes straight. And if you have small hands, which I don't, Simondl might be your weapon of choice more often, especially on the lower frets where 1 finger per fret might feel challenging. But because we're only covering 3 frets, that means more shifting when a bass line uses more than 3 frets, which is less efficient for speed playing when you need to be ready for all those notes flying at you. The 1 finger per fret technique is strong where Simondl is a little weaker. You get better efficiency on bass lines spanning more than 3 frets, which becomes crucial at faster speeds, and it can also help you minimize your transition noise and shifting effort even at slow or medium tempos like we saw with Time Bomb. But it comes at the cost of holding more tension in your hand to hold the stretch, especially on those lower frets. By the way, if you want more practice with the 1 finger per fret technique, you can check out my 5 levels of bass finger exercise video here on YouTube. So how do you decide which technique to use when? First, you want to clarify whether you're fingering for practice or for performance. If you're in practice mode, just running scales and exercises and stuff like that, you may want to bias towards 1 finger per fret because practice is about developing skills. As a beginner, it takes some work to be able to cover a 4-fret span, which is a really useful skill for tons of bass lines, and it also takes work to get good finger independence so that they're not misfiring. So using 1 finger per fret will help put a little bit more pressure on your stretching skills and your independent skills, which can be a really good thing as long as you're careful with your body and you're not going into pain mode. So that's practice mode, developing skills. But if you're in performance mode, like prepping bass lines to actually play on stage, then you want to think about doing the least work for the max result. Then you might bias more towards Simondl because it saves stretching energy, and a lot of bass lines don't actually require stretching across more than 3 frets. Coming up with good fingerings is not an exact science, but here are a couple guiding principles. 1, if what you're playing is relatively slow, you can probably relax and use Simondl most of the time, regardless of how many frets you're covering, because there's plenty of time to shift. And 2, if what you're playing is fast and covers more than 3 frets, then 1 finger per fret is probably your best bet. But beyond that, there are way too many variables to give definite answers, including hand size and personal taste. It takes practice to find good fingerings, so guidance from a teacher or a course early on will give you valuable experience that'll lead you to your own great fingerings down the road.
A new challenger enters the ring. The 1 finger only technique.